no visitors. We see all the time now that, no visitors due to COVID-19. Will not be allowing visitors at this facility. So how are you supposed to do a quality management system audit or an on-site audit where you can't get on site? Right. So, as in March, March, April, we're rounding out our audit schedule, and all of a sudden, boom, no more on-site audits. You can't go anywhere. You can't travel to suppliers. What do you do? So you take a look at, what are the challenges potentially of doing a desk or a remote audit? And, you take a look at, what are the concerns? You can't randomize the evidence. So a supplier can really cherry pick what data they're going to give you, because you're not on site. You're not being able to, pull specific part numbers or specific documents that you see during your walkthrough and things like that. The added complexity of the time to assess the procedures, the files for review, all that adds up time. You're not going to be as effective interviewing the auditors or interviewing the auditee. You won't be able to read their facial expressions. You won't be able to read them when you're going through an audit, the body language, things like that, where you don't have the ability to observe and assess those nonverbal communications. And then the lack of ability to evaluate the supplier implementing the product identification, the inspection status, non-conforming material, quarantine areas. You can't do that walkthrough. So,
Chris, have you seen? So I've witnessed a couple different scenarios over the last 2 months where some of those auditing, they're actually doing video auditing, so they can see some of that you just talked about, that human aspect, right? And then I'm curious to get your thoughts. One of our global clients they used to always have 2 auditors on site for their facilities, and now they're creating a sort of a remote COVID auditing plan where now they're only moving into next year. They're only going to have 1. The other one will support remotely, but trying to create some of those efficiencies because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. You got to understand what those challenges are, and then put workarounds in place to get through them. And that's what we'll go through here is how do you reduce that impact? So, for the last 20 plus years, we've been auditing suppliers on site, going through their processes, and, it's a new process. So how do you remove some of these challenges? So, when you're randomizing evidence, upfront planning to understand the population of available records. So many suppliers are open to uploading files in advance. If you know what you're asking for, work with your manufacturing site or sites and understand where are your challenges. Where do you want me to focus in when I go to supplier XYZ? So getting that information up front and understanding that will help maximize those data requests, so you can get a better selection of those data over that data. Obtaining those procedures ahead of time, and then taking the time to go through them so that you're not reading them when you're on a WebEx or whatnot with a supplier or on a Zoom call, so that you're knowledgeable of their process before you're going in. So you're building that efficiency right in. And then, electronic tools, using Box, WebEx, video chat, Zoom, things like that. Many suppliers are open to, well, let's take the computer around our manufacturing facility. I'll show you XYZ. I'll show you our quarantine area. I'll show you our calibration area, and walk you through those things. Some suppliers won't. Some suppliers will want to just, hey, here's the videos. I'll send you videos of the sections, but we don't want to go through live because we may be distracting the manufacturing personnel. So you got to be flexible. You got to work with the supplier and understand, the best ways to be able to get that information.
And I mean, you spoke to this earlier, right? But I always say in our office that every time you interact with somebody, you either gain credibility or you lose it. And from the same standpoint, if you're dealing, you've got a relationship, there's trust that's been built there, the outcome and the trending makes sense, then there's going to be more flexibility there, you would expect.
Absolutely. And, and to that point too, work with the supplier. Make sure you have a non-disclosure agreement in place with that supplier. Make sure that you're building that trust through legal means if necessary, with a non-disclosure. That'll help, kind of break down some of those barriers. There's obviously COVID brings a lot of barriers, and how you can overcome them is how you're going to be successful. You know, if you just say, oh, can't go on site, can't audit, it's not going to work, maybe next year, you're not going to get it done. So you got to figure out ways to get through those barriers or around those barriers. So, you know, electronic video chats, you know, and then, you know, be clear with the supplier that, hey, if we have concerns, we're going to want to come on site, you know, when things open back up, when we're lit, you know, this might be the first piece. It might be all of the audit, but let them know that, you know, this isn't a one-stop shop audit. You know, we might come in more if we do find, you know, some risk there. You know, it's not a, hey, this is my audit for the year, I'll see you in 3 years. There could be challenges, and be upfront and honest with the supplier. I think that's the important piece.
Well, just like you talked about, you're collecting the data, you got to evaluate the data, you've got to understand where your potential gaps are. It's, you know, we had the educational webinar we did on quality management system integration and remediation with the tool Sana in August, and one of the warning letters and issues that he talked about, that particular quality management system, which was an acquisition, they had not looked at the design history file and looked at it from an oversight standpoint for several years, which is why they got in trouble. So if you're not evaluating your processes and you're looking at the data to make sure that you actually have best practices, certainly you're going to have problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and then the final piece, you know, how do you get through some of the, you know, evaluation of different areas? Use those videos, follow up if need be. You know, I think there's plenty of ways to overcome those challenges. You just gotta think through it, and then work with the supplier, and then partner with them, and just make sure everyone's on the same page.